important that when we look at the VGBE report, it's not necessarily in isolation. Essentially is, if you like, a combination, a tapestry, part of the tapestry of the work that has been done in this area, trying to, from one angle or the other, trying to understand the operational performance at Eskom. I think that just three major themes that are cutting across all of these reports that I've mentioned: the Ministerial Technical Task Team Review Team, the World Bank report, the WSP report, the VGBE report, and the work that I've done, the report on the diagnostic generated by the Minister in the Presidency responsible for electricity. So three broad themes. The first one is issues around the processes. Essentially, this talks to issues around the management of infrastructure. And then the second theme is around the operating systems and plant. And then the third theme has to do with people, mindset, behavior, capabilities, the issues of morale, you can mention them. So those are the three broad themes that are coming out of this exercise. So I think it's important that there's an appreciation that, of course, there is some work that is being done on how best to respond to these issues. But I think the major event that has happened since the commissioning of those reports is that there's greater levels of stability at Eskom. Now we have a more permanent appointment at the apex level in the form of the CEO, Mr. Dan Marukani, and of course the leadership of the board under Dr. Mteto, essentially trying to ensure that there's a consolidation first of these reports, their findings and recommendations, and they are working on the more structured way of how best to respond to some of those issues. Having said that, I must emphasize that already there's work that is being done in relation to responding to some of those issues. So we're looking forward to that consolidation and a more structured approach on how we're responding to these issues. Like I said, every time when I come here, I do the update on the energy action plan. I'll be touching on some of those issues, plant and system, the operating systems, and also the plan. I mean, another typical example of the progress that have been made going forward. If you look at the VGB report, just to isolate it, it makes a point of an incentive scheme just to get the morale going. Mr. Ngumalo, the new head of generation, has already introduced that. If you look at the VGB, it talks to the issues of attention to the reduction of the partial load losses. I've made the point that Mr. Ngumalo and the team are already working on that. Isolated Matimba, Kendal, amongst other power stations that requires attention. The VGB report does make the point that there's been, as they refer to it in inverted commas, a fixation on EAF and therefore undermining, if you like, issues around philosophy maintenance we have made, and then delaying maintenance of some of this, the fleet of Eskom, which can result in dire consequences going into the future. One of the issues that we have been making, the point I've been making consistently in the leadership of Eskom under the board stewardship of Dr. Mteto and also Mr. Ngumalo, was the fact that there's greater investment on maintenance. So the 252 billion fiscal relief focused on the maintenance, and that's why when you went into the period of December of last year, January of this, 18% of our generating capacity was out on planned maintenance. So essentially not taking expedient measures, not taking shortcuts, and that's what the team has been doing. And we continue to do that even to this stage, to ensure that there's greater investments in maintenance. So I thought that it's important that there is that appreciation. And of course the leadership under Mr. Dan Marukani will be able to ensure that there's a more cogent and coherent response, not just to the VGBE, but also to WSP, the World Bank, and the Ministerial Technical Review Team. Some of those recommendations, like I said, the team has been working on that, so we'll provide a more consolidated picture of what we're doing. So we're using that as a canvas against which we're able to mount these responses. But I guess that from time to time, when we take the opportunity to share with you the work that we've been doing in relation to the Energy Action Plan is in part a response to that. And then the other feature of an illustration of the response to this, the genesis of the Energy Action Plan, those 5 outcomes, some of those outcomes, how they've been configured, is a function of what some of these reports would have been saying. Of course, the ones that came before the introduction of the Energy Action Plan, they would have been a significant basis against which we are able to formulate what constitute the Energy Action Plan. So what's the point I'm making is that all of these things should be seen in their totality, and that's the work that we'll be doing. We have, of course, in the course of doing this, in the interim, the leadership of Eskom has identified, if you like, 10 focus areas. Remember I said the transversal themes are 3, but then those then gets to be elaborated in the focus areas. How best do you respond to these transversal areas? And this focus areas predates the VGBE report, and you will see that some of them essentially addresses what comes out of the VGBE report. Those 10 focus areas, the first one is around the plant condition, something that is being elevated in the VGB report and something that has been receiving attention. The issues of inadequate capacity, essentially responding to issues around if you like, part of it responding to the people's issues, including a third area around skills and experience. Just an appreciation that, especially when it comes to a new build program, and also the fact that over a period of time, there's been significant hemorrhaging of the skills because of both the subjective and objective challenges that have been facing Eskom. We have found that there's a number of people with considerable degree of experience that have left. So it's important that you are able to continue to build the pipeline of experience. So it's one of the areas that have been receiving attention, the third area. And then the other one is the new build defects. So I think it's a matter of public record that there's a number of defects that accompanied, if you like, the commissioning of both Kusile and Medupi, and those are receiving attention. So those are some of the areas that were receiving attention. And then the Eskom Roadtech Industries, essentially, if you like, an arm of Eskom, an implementing arm of Eskom from a technical point of view. I think they need to capacitate it so that there's no over-reliance on external parties. And that's one of the issues that comes out of the VGB report, over-reliance on external parties without necessarily building internal capacity. So one of the focus areas is really about strengthening that Roadtech. And of course, we know that Mr. Numalo comes out of that area arena, and we have I think the leadership of Roadtech now confirmed the stability there, and they also continue to build their own capacity. And then there's issues of fraud and corruption, the point that we've been making consistently, the need for us to ensure that we are able to address issues of leakage, because they undermine the degree and ability of Eskom to respond to these challenges. It's a focus area of attention. And then there are issues around coal. Of course, on record, when we came on stream, the issues around coal quality, how you manage the coal assets, now that you've got Kusile, the degree to which you're going to get to a stage where you are going to run the 6 units, whether you are able to confirm the availability of that supply. So there's a coal management plan that Eskom has put in place. So that's another focus areas. And then there are issues that are related to policies and procedures. And this talks to the rate at which Eskom can procure, especially given the environment that Eskom is facing. And if you look at the VGB report, it does elevate the issues around the procurement dispensation, just creating a bespoke dispensation to allow Eskom to be able to have an accelerated path in relation to procurement. So those are procedures, internal procedures, and some of them are governed by a prevailing legislation. And the point I've made previously was that there is that engagement between Eskom, National Treasury, to see to what degree there could be some level of leverage given to Eskom to go into the procurement space, without undermining the issues of transparency, competitiveness, and the like, but essentially allowing the speed with which that procurement can happen, given, if you like, the state of emergency that is confronting us on the energy side. And then the ninth issue is around the funding, and this has received considerable attention. I think the fiscal relief being provided by National Treasury has gone a long way, has enabled, if you like, the ramping up of planned maintenance. I think there's a relationship between the amount of maintenance we can do and the available funding, and we know that there's been a significant erosion of the ESCOM balance sheet. Of course, they're on track to address that situation. But I think that fiscal relief from National Treasury has provided, if you like, significant breathing space, and ESCOM is able to do the amount of planned maintenance that we are seeing now. And of course, the results will be seen when these units return to service. The VGBE report does make the point that there's investment in planned maintenance not being expedient, not being fixated, as they put it in inverted commas, with EAF, but doing what is right to these plans. And that's what the team has been doing, and that funding dispensation has helped. And then the last one of the 10 is around the environmental compliance. So essentially, if you look at the prevailing legislation, a lot of this ESCOM power station will be will be found wanting in relation to environmental compliance. I think becoming more stringent, of course, to safeguard and protect the livelihoods of, and the lives rather, and health of people within the immediate proximity of this power station, but also to protect proximity, reduce emissions. And we know science has proven, if you like, the rate at which we emit and climate change, and we know what the devastating impact of climate change on the lived experiences of our people. We don't need to look further than what's happening in KZN and some of the drought that we've experienced in the Western Cape provinces. The floods also again in the Northwest and KZN are just a living testimony of what this is, the devastation that is caused by climate change. So it's important that in the course of this, we are able to focus on issues of environmental compliance, and I underline compliance because we have no other option but to comply with those legislative prescripts. So the point I'm making is that having identified those 3 transversal areas, and then there's these 10 focus areas. Of course, the leadership under Dr. Teto and the CEO